Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. We have another great show for you. First, Alan Jackson withdraws and is no longer Nick Reiner's attorney. The Uvalde officer trial is suspended following, a witness's change of account. Mystery surrounding the double homicide of the Ohio couple in their family home. Kouri Richins' murder case goes ahead starting in February. And a man was stabbed because he didn't smell no cooking going on. The new revelations on Chris Watts' prison life. We've got This Day in Legal History, our quote of the day that you don't want to miss. And of course, our dumb criminal tries his version of a golden shower. Let's talk about it.
All right, lawyer.
Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave me a comment below, and make sure you hit that little bell for notifications of when we go live or put up new content. For those of you who were with us last night for our live, it was a great show. Thanks for being there. All right, let's go ahead and remind you. Let me tell you to go to crimetalkprep.com. All right. Not to be confused with crimetalksearch.com, but go to crimetalkprep.com. They're our sponsor today. All right. In an unpredictable world, and I think we can all agree, the world is pretty unpredictable these days. We've got emergencies. We've got natural disasters, and they can strike without warning. And it is essential to prepare for the worst case scenarios to safeguard yourself and your loved ones. This is not paranoia, ladies and gentlemen. It is about being prudent, and it is about being prepared. So that's why we here at Crime Talk are recommending you visit crimetalkprep.com, where you can explore reliable emergency food and supplies through crimetalkprep.com. Secure your peace of mind today, because readiness is the key to resilience. crimetalkprep.com. All right, let's go ahead and open the record for Wednesday, January 7th, 2026. And first on the docket, like I mentioned in the intro, Alan Jackson is out as the attorney for Nick Reiner. So in what can only be said is a significant development in the high-profile murder case involving Nick Reiner, his defense attorney, Alan Jackson, has withdrawn from representation shortly before the scheduled arraignment on charges related to the death of his parents. That's right, Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Reiner. Now, the withdrawal occurred during a court appearance this morning, leading to the assignment of a public defender and a postponement of the proceedings. Now, according to reports there, Jackson, who previously represented Reiner in the initial hearing, informed the judge of his decision to step aside. Now, as you know, Reiner appeared in court wearing a dark jumpsuit and did not enter a plea. He agreed to delay the arraignment further, with the next hearing now set for February 23rd. Now, Reiner remains in custody without bail, and he's not going anywhere in a double homicide case. Let's get for real. So the public defender, Kimberly Green, stepped in after a brief court appearance, apparently in chambers, where Jackson was allowed to be relieved of his duties, and then the public defender, Kimberly Green, stepped in, has been appointed to handle the case temporarily, and it's uncertain whether she will continue long term, if a death penalty team from the public defender's office will come in, or whether private counsel will in fact be retained. Like I said, Reiner faces 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances stemming from the stabbing death of his parents back on December 14th. Police discovered the bodies inside the gated residence, and Reiner was apprehended hours later in the Exposition Park area near the University of Southern California. Now, it's been indicated that Reiner had been residing at his parents' property, and that an argument occurred between him and his father at a holiday gathering the night before the homicides. Investigations have revealed that Reiner's documented struggles with substance abuse and mental health, which reportedly worsened prior to the events. Law enforcement and legal teams have been examining his psychiatric and addiction history since his arrest. Now, at a prior court appearance back in December, specifically December 17th, Reiner waived his right to a speedy arraignment, citing concerns about his medical clearance. Basically, he was on a suicide watch, which he was just taken off of yesterday. Now, a spokesperson for the Reiner family expressed confidence in the judicial system and declined to provide additional comments on the proceedings. Reiner's siblings, Jake and Romy Reiner, issued a statement last month conveying their profound grief. Quote, "The historic and devastating loss of our parents is something no one should ever experience. They were not just our parents. They were our best friends," end quote. They requested privacy and urged compassion in public discourse, emphasizing the need to honor their parents' legacy and love and achievement. Now remember, if convicted, Nick Reiner will face life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, or he does face the potential for a death penalty, but seems, let's be honest, very unlikely. The family is expected to release a statement regarding Jackson's withdrawal following Wednesday's session, but Jackson, known for his role in other notable cases, is subject to a protective order prohibiting discussions of this case. So there was a little bit of breaking news. Jackson did come out, made a quick statement, and said that one thing that he's absolutely certain of is that Nick Reiner is not guilty. Okay, I get it. Mr. Jackson, you're doing your job. Good on you. But the real question is why did he get off? Now, the family says they're going to respect the judicial process and let everything kind of run its course. I don't know. But there's a couple of things that have been going on here. One, obviously, Alan Jackson wants to be paid. He likes publicity, like most criminal defense attorneys. You know, attorneys have been known to have an ego. And when you're on the biggest case, you know, in the United States at that particular time, it's great, but it doesn't pay the bills. So you want to get paid. All the experts are going to want to be paid. So really what it comes down to is, did the family either one, not be able to get the money, or two, they don't want to pay the money? Remember, the brothers and sister, right? Their parents were killed by allegedly Nick Reiner. Would you want to necessarily pay for his defense when he can get a free attorney? I hate to say it, but you know, there's probably a lot of emotions going on there at this time. Now we will see. We'll have to see how this develops over the next several weeks. Either private counsel will enter and, you know, they'll do their due diligence and they'll decide what they need to do, or he is going to have to remain, he being Nick Reiner, is going to have to remain with the public defender. Obviously, he's in custody, regardless of what money he may have in a bank account or whatever his parents' estate may have, doesn't mean that they have to spend it on him. So we'll see. It doesn't sound like there was any issue directly with Alan Jackson. In fact, the family said that he was a, quote, pro, end quote. So he did everything right. I think it's a access to money thing. Either the estate can't get it to pay for these services, or B, whoever's in charge of the estate doesn't want to pay for it. And we will see if that is the case in the next couple of weeks. Like I said, either private counsel, somebody else will come in, or they're going to let the public defenders handle it from here. Next on the docket, the Uvalde officer trial took a bit of a turn today. So the criminal trial of Adrian Gonzalez, a former school police officer in Uvalde, Texas, came to an abrupt halt on Tuesday after a pivotal witness altered her description of events surrounding the 2022 Robb Elementary School shooting, which claimed the lives of 21 people. 19 students and 2 teachers. Now, Gonzalez, who faces 29 charges of child abandonment or endangerment, has entered a plea of not guilty. And if he was found guilty, he could face up to 2 years of imprisonment, according to the prosecutors, for each count. Now, the charges stem from the allegation that he failed to adequately respond during the tragic incident. And during testimony, ex-teacher Stephanie Hale stated that she observed the assailant on the southern portion of the school grounds, aligning with Gonzalez's position at the time. However, defense counsel contested this, pointing out inconsistencies with Hale's prior 2022 interview with a Texas Ranger, where she reportedly positioned the shooter nearer to Gonzalez than her current account suggests. A detailed that was reported. So in response, the jury was excused until Thursday to allow legal teams to formulate arguments on related motions. Now, a hearing is scheduled for Wednesday morning. with the defense signaling a potential motion for a mistrial. Now, Gonzalez was one of the initial responders reaching the scene while the teenager perpetrator remained outside the building. The prosecution alleges he hesitated to act even after a colleague indicated the shooter's whereabouts. Now, the prosecutor, a guy by the name of Bill Turner, emphasized in opening remarks that Gonzalez entered the school only after the majority of the harm had occurred, despite his decade-long experience and specialized training in active shooter scenarios. Turner asserted that standard protocols require officers to advance towards gunfire, highlighting Gonzalez's alleged inaction at a critical lapse in judgment there. The indictment further claims he neglected to confront, divert, or impede the attacker, thereby exposing children to immediate peril and deviating from established procedures, despite auditory cues of shots fired and direct information on the shooter's location. In contrast, Gonzalez's legal team, led by attorney Nico LaHood, refuted claims of passivity, describing the environment as highly disorganized, and they maintained that Gonzalez assisted in evacuating students as additional law enforcement arrived and did his best based upon the information available at the time. Now, obviously, there's a lot of scrutiny of law enforcement and their response back to that May 2022 massacre there at the Robb Elementary. But, Gonzalez is among those indicted for their role in the incident. And he's one of two people indicted. It's a difficult case, so to speak, because, are we going to start prosecuting people that don't respond appropriately to a situation like this? Yes, he's a police officer, but I don't know. It seems like kind of a stretch. I understand the people in the Uvalde community are angry and upset, but what do you do? The police don't arrive quick enough to a 911 call. Are we going to start prosecuting the police for doing that? I don't know. Doesn't seem necessarily right to me. But I understand the family's anger. But as it relates to the witness, the teacher that's placing Gonzalez, at a different location than what she previously talked about, I'm not really sure why we're stopping the trial. That goes directly to her credibility. And if her testimony can't be trusted and it can be impeached through prior inconsistent statements, then the jury has to consider that, which may be enough for the defense to raise reasonable doubt. I'm not sure it's a mistrial, but I guess we'll find out tomorrow and see what is the court's ruling and why they needed to halt the proceedings. I've watched it, don't understand it. It's called inconsistent statements. That goes to the witness's credibility. Next, let's talk about the ongoing mystery surrounding the double homicide of an Ohio couple in their family home. So in a tragic incident that has left a community shocked, Spencer Tepe and Monique Tepe were fatally shot in their Columbus, Ohio residence on December 30th of last year. The couple, who had celebrated their wedding in the same home and were raising two young children there, were discovered deceased while their 1-year-old and their 4-year-old were present but unharmed, apparently literally crying for their parents. Now, more than a week later, police have yet to identify a suspect or motive, and the investigation remains active with limited public disclosure. Now, police have classified the deaths as homicides resulting from gunshot wounds, confirmed by preliminary findings from the Franklin County Coroner's Office, though no full autopsy results have not been released and are still pending. Now, the investigators have noted no evidence of forced entry into the home and no recovery of a weapon at the scene, adding a little bit of layer of intrigue to the case. Now, the key update came on January 5th when the Columbus police shared surveillance video capturing an individual described as a person of interest near the home during the suspected time of the killings. Take a look at this video here. Not really much to go on, but this person just happened to be in the area between 2 and 5 a.m. So what do we know about as far as the timeline of events? So to provide some clarity on the sequence of the developments, the following outline, we're going to try to give it to you. All right, December 29th. This marks the last confirmed public sighting of Spencer Tepe, who's a dentist. A friend later reported to emergency dispatchers that he had interacted with Tepe on this date, describing him as healthy and not exhibiting any signs of illness. Notably, the killings occurred just 1 month shy of the couple's 5th wedding anniversary. Then on December 30th, police estimate the shooting took place between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the upstairs area of the home. Now, the first emergency call was received at 8:58 a.m. from Spencer Tepe's employer, Dr. Mark Valeros, who was vacationing in Florida. Concerned by Tepe's uncharacteristic absence from work at the Athens Dental Depot and the inability to reach his wife, Valeros requested a welfare check. An officer arrived at approximately 9:22 a.m., but departed after receiving no response at the door. Shortly after that, colleagues and a friend visited the home, prompting additional 911 calls at 9:56 a.m. and 9:58 a.m., reporting sounds of children inside and ongoing concerns about the couple's unresponsiveness. At 10:03 a.m., the friend who had seen Tepe the previous day called again, urgently reporting the discovery of a body. Police returned at approximately 10:04 a.m., and by 10:11 a.m., both victims were pronounced dead by medical responders. On January 2nd of this year, the Tepe family issues a public statement expressing profound devastation over the tragic and senseless loss. They highlighted the couple's loving nature and commitment to their community, vowing to pursue justice and safeguard the children's well-being. On January 5th, the Columbus police released footage from the early morning of December 30th showing an individual in light pants and a dark hooded jacket walking through a nearby snow-covered alley with their heads lowered. Described as a person of interest, this release prompted calls for public tips. Police expressed appreciation for community output and pledged ongoing updates while addressing public concerns about the case. Then on January 6th, in response to inquiries, police spokesperson Sergeant Joe Albert declined to elaborate on the person of interest's significance or clarify them as a suspect, citing the need to preserve investigative integrity. Questions regarding entry methods, potential targeting, public safety risks, or motives remain completely unanswered by the police. So where does it stand now? The Columbus Division of Police continues to seek information from the public, urging anyone with relevant details or additional footage from a specified time frame to come forward. That's that time frame between 2 and 5 a.m. The absence of clear leads has heightened local anxiety, though officials have not indicated an immediate broader threat. Now, the Tepes were remembered by loved ones as dedicated parents and professionals, Spencer as a reliable dentist, and Monique as a supportive partner whose lives were abruptly ended in a place of personal significance. As the inquiry progresses, the family and police remain focused on achieving a resolution of this heartbreaking double homicide. This is going to be an interesting one, ladies and gentlemen. People obviously don't wind up dead in their home. Obviously, it was already determined it wasn't a murder-suicide because there's no firearm remaining at the scene. Thank goodness the children were safe. But at the end of the day, this is going to be an interesting whodunit. Now, whether this person is just a person that was walking along in an alley between 2 and 5 a.m., just coincidentally on the night of the homicide, maybe that's a possibility, or maybe it could be somebody involved. But if anybody has any information, they should come forward immediately. Next on the docket, let's talk about Kouri Richins' murder trial that's coming ahead. So the lawyers convened virtually on January 2nd to address the preparatory matters in the case against Kouri Richins, the 35-year-old Camas resident charged with the death of her husband, Eric Richins. Now, the session focused on timelines and procedural elements in anticipation of evidentiary hearings and a scheduled jury trial. As you may recall, Richins faces charges of aggravated murder and 3 counts of possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute, stemming from events back in 2022. Now, the prosecution asserts that she administered a lethal dose of fentanyl to her husband in March of that year. Following his passing, Richins actually authored a book and promoted this children's book on coping with loss, including an appearance on a local lifestyle program. Now, during the pretrial conference, both attorneys for both sides examined forthcoming deadlines and protocols for witness presentations at trial. A 2-day evidentiary hearing is slated for today, January 7th and 8th, during which the court will evaluate motions and what evidence is going to be admissible. The judge reported that as of December 30th of last year, 1,400 prospective jurors in Summit County had submitted questionnaires. An additional 345 questionnaires remain outstanding, with follow-up notifications issued on January 2nd to encourage those individuals to complete their questionnaires. A notable update in the case occurred in October of 2025 involving witness Robert Crozier, who withdrew prior statements to investigators. Initially, Crozier claimed to have provided fentanyl to an associate of Richins, which police allege was used in the poisoning. He has since revised his account, stating that he supplied OxyContin instead. Now, obviously, when somebody changes their story, that helps the defense. And the prosecution evidence in this case appears, somewhat circumstantial at this point, emphasizing, there's some marital and financial strain, and highlighted the unpredictable nature of trials where planned elements often shift, right? Well, the defense attorneys outlined their intentions to submit motions before and after the upcoming hearings, and the judge advised them to verify the case docket and ensure all filings are timely prior to the proceedings. Now, the conference transitioned into a closed sessions to deliberate on the prospective testimony of Richins' mother, after which it adjourned. Anyway, jury selection is scheduled to begin on February 10th through the 13th, and then resume again on the 17th through the 18th. Trial is scheduled to begin on February 23rd, and they believe that it will take at least 5 weeks to conduct the trial. Next on the docket, a man gets stabbed because he didn't smell no cooking going on. Now, I say that jokingly because I sometimes walk into the house at night and I ask the lovely Miss Kristen, I don't smell no cooking going on. What are we having for dinner? I say that jokingly. All right. I don't expect the lovely Miss Kristen to make me dinner, but I also walk in many times and say, smells good. What's cooking for dinner? Anyway, I'm going to be a little more careful. You never know what can happen to you. Anyway, police have charged a 32-year-old woman with murder in connection with the stabbing death of her 64-year-old uncle, stemming from a heated argument in their shared home shortly after Christmas. Ashley Marie Siebenthaler faces allegations of fatally stabbing Tony Vernon Graham on December 26th, the day after Christmas, obviously, in a residence located there in Fort Worth, Texas. She was arrested on January 5th of this year. Police responded to a report of a stabbing at approximately 12:18 p.m. on December 26th. Upon arrival, officers discovered Graham in the living room suffering from a single chest wound. Despite medical efforts, he was pronounced dead at the scene at about 12:46. The home was leased by an individual who sublet rooms to multiple occupants, including Siebenthaler and Graham, who shared the living area. Witnesses informed police that they overheard an argument between the pair prior to the incident. One witness later found Graham collapsed on the floor and observed a bloodied knife on a nearby couch where Siebenthaler was seated. The knife was subsequently relocated to a table by the witness. When officers attempted to question Siebenthaler at the scene, she exhibited limited verbal communication, leading police to believe that she might be nonverbal. Communication occurred, though, through written notes in which she denied knowledge of the events and rejected any role in the stabbing whatsoever. A subsequent interview, however, on December 30th revealed some improved clarity in Siebenthaler's responses. Now, although she initially maintained her denial, she eventually confessed to the act. And what did she explain? Well, she had frustration that arose from Graham locking her out of the house earlier that day and instructing her to begin preparing meals. She alleged that Graham initiated the violence by stabbing her in the mouth, but examinations by investigators revealed no visible injuries on her. Then on January 2nd, a roommate contacted police expressing alarm after observing Siebenthaler's positioned outside their bedroom door while holding a knife, raising concerns for all the residents. An arrest warrant was issued on January 3rd. She was taken into custody 2 days later and booked into the Tarrant County Jail on one count of murder. No bail has been set as of yet. See, don't be asking people what's for dinner. Start making me a sandwich. I don't see no sandwich going on. Yeah, get you in big trouble. Big trouble. Could get you dead. Gentlemen, you go home, smell cooking, say, wow, it smells wonderful. Don't say, I don't smell no cooking going on. You're going to wind up dead. Next, Chris Watts, the case that started CrimeTalk. Well, another one of his buddies is giving us new information. So in a case that continues to captivate public attention, new details have emerged about the life of Chris Watts, the Colorado man serving a life sentence for the 2018 murder of his pregnant wife and 2 young daughters. Insights comes from a former fellow inmate reveal that Watts' religious transformation and his ongoing challenges with interpersonal relationships, shedding a little bit of light on his behavior behind bars. So Watts, who's now 40 and was convicted after admitting to strangling his wife, Shanann Watts, and suffocating their daughters, Bella and Celeste, and stuffing the 2 young girls into an oil holding tank at an oil and gas drilling site where Chris Watts had worked and was familiar with. He disposed of their bodies in that little oil field work site where, like I said, he was employed. Now, initially, he feigned concerned in media appearances before police uncovered his affair with a coworker. That's right, Nicole Kessinger, which motivated the crimes, apparently. Now sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, Watts was transferred to the Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin, since apparently it was a little unsafe for him to stay in the state of Colorado. Anyway, this former inmate, Dylan Talman, who shares an adjacent cell with Watts for 7 months back in 2020, provided an account of their interactions with interviews and some published works. Talman, now released and operating a YouTube channel focused on true crime and describes personal redemption, described Watts as someone who remains vulnerable to romantic obsessions, particularly with women. Anyway, he developed intense fixation quickly, and Talman explained, noting that Watts maintains contact with multiple female correspondents through lengthy letters, sometimes up to 15 pages, and frequent phone calls. Prison records confirm that several women have contributed funds to his commissary account supporting these connections, and Talman highlighted how Watts attributed his crime to the influence of Kessinger, portraying her in letters as a seductive figure, akin to the biblical temptress. In one correspondence, Watts likened her to Bathsheba, warning of dangers of unchecked temptation. David saw Bathsheba and had stopped there, all would have been well. The issue arose when he lingered on the thoughts until sin took a hold. Another letter invoked a Harlow, whose words led to ruin, drawing parallels to scripture narratives. Anyway, Watts has also referred to Kessinger as a Jezebel, embodying evil influences, according to Talman's book series. Now, the Cell Next Door, which incorporates their shared discussions and abandoned plans for collaborative Bible study devotionals. A pivotal moment in Watts' incarceration, according to Mr. Talman, it was his religious conversion, and it occurred after viewing a television segment featuring commentator Nancy Grace, who directly addressed Watts and displayed images of his victims. It broke him. According to Mr. Talman, he dropped to his knees, confessed his wrongs, and embraced faith from that point. Now, their conversations often revolved around scripture, with Watts using it to reflect on his past actions rather than discussing the murders outright. Now, as you may recall, Ms. Kessinger has since relocated within Colorado under a new identity and denied any knowledge of Chris Watts' family, the situation or of the crime back in 2018, according to a statement that she made at that time. Now, as you may recall, we covered this case pretty closely, and I actually went to, Ms. Kessinger's change of name hearing, and the judge canceled it because she didn't want anybody to know what her new identity was. That's fine. It is what it is. Anyway, Talman indicated that Watts has abandoned efforts to appeal his conviction, expressing in letters that he accepts his imprisonment as fitting, as hopes his story might inspire others toward spiritual redemption. Which that also finally doesn't surprise me, because we analyzed the colloquy between the court and Christopher Watts at his change of plea hearing, and it was bulletproof. The only thing the judge could have said was, tell me in your own words what you did. It was close enough. He admitted to all the elements of the offense. And I'm telling you, a lot of people thought he should withdraw his guilty plea. He was innocent. He was been railroaded, and there were people literally trying to raise money for him to attempt to withdraw his guilty plea. And if they had called me, I would have told them to save your money and move along. But after our legal history course, what we'll do in just a second, we'll talk about a quote of the day, which, some people that still believes that Chris Watts is innocent, well, it fits them. Next, on this day in legal history, January 7th, 1918, the United States Supreme Court unanimously upheld the constitutionality of the World War I military draft, rejecting major attacks, constitutional attacks, and cementing broad federal powers to conscript for national defense. On January 7th, 1919, both Ohio and Oklahoma ratified the 18th Amendment to the United States Constitution, obviously later repealed because that had to do with prohibition. On this date, in 1946, Marsh v. Alabama was decided. It's the First Amendment in a company town. The court ruled that a privately owned company town could not use trespass laws to block leafleting on its sidewalks, treating the space as functionally public and enduring First Amendment landmarks. That's right. Just like the airports used to be able to be a place of free speech. You could go in and say what you want to do. Public square. Even in a company town, the sidewalks were still free speech, and you could pass out leaflets saying unionize. Next, our quote of the day. Like I said, for those people who still think, certain people are innocent even after being, convicted by a jury of their peers, no amount of evidence will ever persuade an idiot. Mark Twain. And finally, our dumb criminal of the day, an ad executive. Well, he had a bad day, I guess. In a case that blends the heights of poor judgment with the depths of public nuisance, a New York advertising professional has secured a favorable resolution following an incident atop a Florida establishment. Please meet Matthew Day, our dumb criminal of the day. Well, he faced charges after allegedly dispensing an unwelcome liquid refreshment from a balcony bar onto unsuspecting pedestrians below. The episode unfolded back in the early morning hours at the Landings, a self-proclaimed elevated hangout in St. Petersburg, Florida. Police reported that Mr. Day, exhibiting signs of intoxication, positioned himself on the rooftop and proceeded to urinate over the edge, inadvertently dousing several individuals on the sidewalk. The aerial impropriety led to his arrest for disorderly conduct back in July of 2025. Now, under a pretrial intervention agreement approved by the court, Day has acknowledged his role in this misdemeanor offense, and the terms require him to complete 50 hours of community service, participate in an alcohol evaluation and counseling, and pay associated supervision and prosecutorial fees. Additionally, he is prohibited from consuming alcohol or other mind-altering substances and must abstain from visiting bars or clubs for the next 6 months per his deal. A status conference was slated for today, and Day, a Penn State alum residing in Hoboken, New Jersey, serves as the head of client success at Ribeye Media, a New York-based ad tech firm he co-founded back in 2023. The company specializes in streamlining digital advertising workflows for broadcasters and media organizations. Notably, his LinkedIn profile has since been abbreviated to Matthew D, perhaps a subtle nod to discretion in the digital age. Anyway, the settlement underscores the judicial system's approach to first-time offenses, transforming what could have been a cascading legal torrent into a mere trickle of repercussions. And while the victims below may have felt the full force of the downpour, Day emerged with his professional trajectory largely intact, albeit with a sobering reminder to keep future elevations, to metaphorical, so to speak. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for today. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next time. And remember, the Constitution matters.